to your awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposites. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Oh, maybe you're already recording, which is a good thing. Well, hi, Dove. I actually had not started recording until you said that. Although I have been streaming I started streaming a few minutes before I plugged into Ustream, but had not pushed the record button yet. So many people probably missed my introduction to the Course in Miracles, although it's not my introduction to the Course in Miracles. It is in the book. But I'd love to just reiterate that every time I begin to start, not just because people need to be aware of what the introduction says, but it sort of resets my consciousness in what I'm talking about. And it just soothes my soul. I can't tell you how it just soothes my soul, but it really does. So as I'm sitting here soothing my soul, I am still in the process of just getting all this stuff together, and I wanted to hook up my little cam to this other computer. I've got two computers that I usually use during the broadcast because, I just happen to think that, if I have the capability of doing it, why not do it? The internet is such a wonderful thing, and it has so many capabilities, possibilities, all that good stuff. So why not, right? Why not? And so here I'm going to start this webcam over here. Uh-oh, there is no connection. Okay, so you guys, I'll be right there. I hope I'm not like showing anything over there. Am I? Okay, so here we go. So now, okay, so this one doesn't want to start. So, oh well, I guess I won't be using that webcam. Okay, but I'm here on Ustream, which is just as good, just as well. So, you guys, this has been an interesting week this past week, and I had so much stuff that I wanted to share with you guys. Um, when I think about all the ways that Spirit kind of communicates with me and talks to me, it is absolutely just beautiful. So I'm like, I've got so much to share. I don't even know where I want to start sharing. So let me. I already did my introduction, and I want to say, that I go out and I hear different speakers and I hear different things, going on, and it's always amazing to me because as I watch other people, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself like, wow, we talk about this thing called unconditional love. We talk about what it means to love. We talk about love in a way that is, as if that's what we are truly doing. So I'll say it that way, as if that is truly what we're doing. But from studying the Course in Miracles and going out talking about this stuff, teaching this stuff, I start to realize and get a better idea of what it is to really be loving. And so as I start to imagine and really embrace this idea of being more loving, of loving, period. My perceptions change, the whole way in which I do it. So the other day I had, I'm always looking and always watching. And it's not like I'm going to say, ooh, got you, like punch bug, I got you not loving or something like that. It's just that I'm always conscious and aware about the idea, the concept of what it means to love and to be loving. And if you're like that, you know exactly what I mean. It's always this thing of checking yourself, doing this check-in. Okay, so I lost my volume. Did I lose mine, or did you guys lose yours? I see the message. Let me Am I mooning you guys? No, I mean, I have on this, um, okay, so I have on this, for those of you that are on Ustream, it's 90 something degrees here in Cleveland. And so it's amazing because I've got on this I'm not gonna say a little shirt, but and so every time I bend over, I keep forgetting that I've got a camera on me. So forgive me if I'm and my apologies to you, or look, you got one on the punch bug. So there you go. Okay, so now let me try this one more time over here. Okay, so all right, so here it is. I'm going to get into what I'm talking about today. So last week I had an occasion to go out to a outdoor concert, which is something that I love to do. Me and my friends, a lot of us go out to some of the summertime events and participate in those types of things. And so on last Wednesday, it was no different. I went out with a bunch of friends, and I've got an eclectic group of friends. I always say that one of the things that God does with us is that he shows up in a variety of forms and fashions to really get us to the point where we're really loving, like I was talking about before. And I always say that other people are there for our own growth, for our own good. We know from the way it says in the Course in Miracles is that when we get into heaven, it's because we have not just opened the kingdom up to ourselves, but opened it up to our brothers and sisters as well. So it becomes this whole process. It's not just one thing, but it's a variety of things. So all is well. All is well done. So on Wednesday it was no different. So we went out to this outdoor concert, and the concert was great. I mean, it was just being out there with all these thousands of people and enjoying an outdoor concert. But that's not the thing that I wanted to tell you about. The thing that I wanted to tell you about was that I've got some friends that are Muslim, and my Muslim friends are just so wonderful and so interesting. So on this particular day, I did a blog on this. I wrote this little blog piece on there because it was such a wonderful experience for me. On this particular day, like usual, when we're all together, they needed to go and make salat, which is Muslims, for those of you who have ever been around or know anything about them, they have these 5 times a day that they have to pray, and it's according to I guess the a time of day. I don't know if it's sunset and sundown, and then but according to them, there's certain times of day that they have to do their prayer. So this particular day was no different. We had been out for a while, and they said that they had to mix a lot. And so at this point, we were going towards the car, and they needed, of course, to turn towards the east and do their prayer and all that stuff. So everybody's like, kind of scattering, like, okay, well, let them go do their prayer, and we'll be right here. And I'm like thinking, I want to make prayer too, darn it. So, I of course get in with them when they go to make prayer. And it's funny, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I have had an occasion where, I pray in groups, I meditate in groups, I meditate all the time. And I have this feeling within my body, not just a mental thing, but what seems like a tangible spirit thing, that when I'm around other people's energy, it's almost like stardust being in the air, like I can feel something. So I get in the car with them, and they go through, and she wraps herself. I don't know what all they did, but it's on this particular occasion, while it's been more of them than this particular occasion, but on this particular occasion there was only two, and the guy was about to lead in prayer. And so, they sat there with, and they through, went through their little ritual thing in preparation. And then all of a sudden, he started the prayer. And the prayer was all in Arabic. So I didn't understand a thing that was said. But all of a sudden, it was like I could feel the air that just got so pregnant and just so powerful as we all sat there in this car to do the prayer work. And, they had to do the vows and all that stuff. And like I said, I didn't know what was being said. And so it was just so intense and so wonderful for me. I've thought a lot about that since it happened. And I thought to myself that, in the culture that I live in the groups of folks I'm around, when we go to a workshop or when we're in church, it's perfectly acceptable for us to say, let us pray, and for us to then join in consciousness together. What happens too is growing up in a Baptist church and being involved in a lot of churches here, there is this process that we go through where when we do prayer work, it's supposed to sound so important, and we're making sure that we cross all our T's and dot all our I's. We talk about healing, we talk about money, we talk about all those things that are supposed to be important to us in the midst of the prayer. And so we're listening and we're evaluating and we're adding a lot of times without really getting into what happened for me in that car was just getting into the devotional aspect of it and just loving God. So whether I called him by his name, God, or whether I called him Allah, if I looked at it, if I know God is all there is, right? If I know that God is all, that's it, nothing else, the one power, the one presence in all and operating through all, it didn't matter for me what it was, who it was that was leading me in prayer. I knew that what we were doing was we were giving our devotion and we were loving God. And no matter what you want to call it at the time, that was what we were doing. And it was just so rich and wonderful and powerful. And I started thinking to myself, when I went to the Church of Today in Detroit, Michigan, where Marion Williamson was the minister for a time, one of the things that she would do is she would just say, get on loudspeaker and say, okay, we're going to meditate. And, it's just like, everybody drop what you're doing, sit down wherever you are, or we're going to do prayer right now, wherever you're at. But it doesn't become, for me and the groups that I'm with, it's not like this 5 times a day. It's not like this, like this joining in spirit and this. And so, I'll tell you, I was a little envious, not saying that I would ever, because I love all religions. um I don't know that I would ever like switch to anything like that. I'm a course student and I love the course, and I love being free and open to express and to share God however I see fit. And so that's not to say that I am going to ever like switch over into something else, but I loved what happened in that car on that particular day. And I think that I will seek that out on a regular basis in the future because it was just so moving for me. But it also made me think about how I have this idea that God shows up, just God showing up all the time. I mean, and I don't want to make it sound like God shows up because God is never absent. It is that all of a sudden I'm aware of what is always aware of me, what is always operating in and through me. I am a funny in the sense that sometimes I do my little exercises. I think it's part of the exercise to go through and just see how God can show up in my life. And so sometimes I'm like, as I'm driving down the street, it's like this exercise that I do. Like, okay, God, let's see what you got. Let's see what you got. I may have shared this with you before because I do it all the time. Let's see what you got. And I'm driving along and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, there go God. Oh, there go God. And I'm just laughing, thinking to myself, like, all the funny ways that God shows up. And I stay in the hood, okay? So sometimes he's pushing a shopping cart down the street, and sometimes he's, like laying in some window or some doorway somewhere, or just any multitude of ways that God shows up. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, oh, there's God, there's God, there's God. And, I'm constantly asking, like, well, wow, if that was supposed to be a challenge, is that the best you've got? So I'm always like mindful of that. And I think that it's such a wonderful exercise for us to practice seeing all the different ways that God shows up. Because here's the thing. When we start talking about, start talking about respect for the differences in people, when we start talking about what it means to be loving, if we are really on the path and trying to be loving and allowing love, then that means that no matter what or how God shows up, that we're going to be in a place of love and in this thing where we're sending and sharing and recognizing that this is my brother and he is part of the sonship. And in order for me to be in the sonship, I need to recognize that. Now, I've got some things that I want to share with you out of the course. Let me pull this out over here. I'm like, ugh, taking up this whole chair. Um, but let's see. What did I want to share first? I'm like getting ahead of myself here. So let's see. So in the sense that we're looking at it and trying to see how God shows up, our ego would tell us that God has to look a certain way or act a certain way or be a certain way. That's the ego part of us that says that. Our egos want to say, you know what, we put all these labels on people and we kind of like try to keep them imprisoned in our thought system. So when I say that I don't think I could change over religions, there are so many religions that don't have that freedom, that idea that God is in all, through all, as all. There are so many people that want to say, I remember my girlfriends telling me that if you would go to purgatory if you actually went to another church if you were Catholic at one time, or some other punishment if you did something else or if you didn't do that. So this whole reward system, it felt to me like a prison. So let me read to this little piece right here. I'm in the Course in Miracles chapter 8, and I think this is section 4 right at the end. Freedom is the only gift you can offer to God's sons, being an acknowledgement of what they are and what He is. That's He with a capital H. Freedom is creation because it is love. Whom you seek to imprison, you do not love. Therefore, when you seek to imprison anyone, including yourself, you do not love him and you cannot identify with him. Oh, isn't that beautiful? When you imprison yourself, you are losing sight of your true identification with me, Jesus is speaking, and the Father. Your identification with the Father and with the Son. Your identification is with the Father and with the Son. It cannot be one and not the other. If you are a part of one, you must be a part of the other, and they are one. The Holy Trinity is holy because it is one. If you exclude yourself from this union, you are perceiving the Holy Trinity as separated. You hear that? You must be included in it because it is everything. Unless you take your place in it and fulfill your function as part of it, the Holy Trinity is as bereft as you are. No part of it can be imprisoned if its truth is to be known. You can't imprison any part of it. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, because it has always been like my thing. I've resisted these labels that people put in on certain things. People put labels on there, and according to the labels, they expect you to act a certain way. So if you say I'm a minister of God, people come up with a whole plethora of ideas about what you can and cannot do. I mean, it's like, oh, heaven forbid you wear, your shoulders out or your arms out, or you curse, or, whatever it is. I mean, damn, they're always like trying to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. It's amazing to me. And so we imprison people in our ideas, our perceptions, our concepts, all these things. And whether or not we're putting them into an actual prison or not, that's exactly what we're doing. I have a friend of mine who is always talking about his wife. And instead of calling, he never uses the term my wife. He never says that. He always says the woman I married. And, I was like sitting there and I was thinking to myself, like, the woman I married, what's the significance of that? But he said to me one day, because I had to ask about it, he says, the woman I'm married and the woman I'm married to. I thought it was sort of, I thought it was derogatory. But what he said to me was very interesting. He says, I don't own her. I don't own anybody. He was like, so for me to say she's my wife is to say that I somehow possess or own her. Now, I will tell you, um, my dad has a tendency to use that wife term synonymous with an appliance or something like that, that a wife has a function, like she's supposed to do certain things. And so, these terms, and I've rebelled against that. I'm not ashamed to say that. I've rebelled against that. But these terms, this idea of imprisoning people in our perceptions, it not only inhibits them, but it also inhibits us and our ability to get a bigger vision of what's possible. Oh, I just love when we imagine, when we live at the expanse of life rather than at the expense of life, where we imagine all that is possible rather than limiting ourselves to certain things. So I'm going down the street and I'm saying, okay, so let me free up my perception of God. There was a song that came out, and I can't think of what the woman's name was that sung it, but I remember going out looking for this CD, and her song was like, what if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. Just a stranger on the bus. I know I can't sing. Trying to make his way home. And it's this whole thing. It was like she was saying, if God, what would he look like, and would we want to believe him if we could see him and he wasn't what, or she wasn't what we thought he should be. So it becomes this thing of this idea of freeing our perception of what we think God to be, and unlocking the prison that we place other people in so that they could be that. um, so as I was going through and I was thinking about all this stuff, there's another passage that I wanted to share with you, um, on this very topic, and so I'll get to it in just a second. So it was wonderful being able to participate in this process with my friends, this process of prayer. Now, I don't know if this is the place that I wanted to share that or not. So let me move on to um, a little bit here. It was also interesting this past week, and I hate to make it sound like I'm just talking about my week and my experiences, but I do believe that sometimes these experiences that I have, the insights that I have throughout the week, are there for me to share with you. And to me, they're so rich, and I spend so much time meditating on them and trying to, squeeze out every bit of awareness that I can from them, so that I can better share with you what they are. But now, speaking on this idea of us relating to our brothers and this whole sonship of us all being connected, if you'll think, and for those of you who are just listening, if you'll think for a minute about what a cross looks like, there is that up and down line that goes up and down, you know, vertically, from what would be the heaven to the earth. So, as in heaven, also on earth, that connection with the spiritual, with the physical, or the ephemeral with our body, or the absolute connecting with that which is relative, that which exists in time. So that which is eternal connecting with that which is temporal. That is symbolic of that one line that goes up and down. For us dealing with our brothers, that is the line that goes across. So the sonship dealing one to the other. So when Jesus talks about this concept of, of us being joined, of, 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 our paths being connected, it is that idea that the whole entire sonship is part of this one system, and that one system is there. I wonder what the heck that is. Okay, so I don't even know what that is, and hopefully I can ignore that. Do you want to see this message again? I don't know. Oh, I don't even know what that is, but hopefully you guys can still hear me. I've got something that's battling with my computer, and I don't know if that's something that came out of that Pal Talk thing or not. But it came on telling me to install something, and I don't want to deal with that at the moment, because I need to be here with you guys. So, okay, great, you can still hear me. So I pulled out this past week. I pulled out my little trusty book. I had been looking for this book all over the place, all over my house, and it is the Course in Miracles, Psychotherapy, Purpose, Process, and Practice that I refer to from time to time, because when I first found this, when I got this book, it was just such a rich little book. I was like, okay, I love sticking it in my purse, and that's why it looks so ratty and everything else. But I had it in my house, and I knew where I had it, but for some reason, when I went to look for it all the time before, it seemed like I couldn't see it. I couldn't, I just didn't. I hadn't seen it. So today, when I was there in the house, all of a sudden I saw something like shining at me, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm thinking like, what is that? And so suddenly I went over there and I pulled it out, and I was like, that's it right there. This is what I've been looking for. And so I pulled it out, and I started thinking to myself, okay, there's some stuff in here that I wanted to share. Um, and so this is such a rich little book for those of you. I'm sure if you're a teacher, you've probably already read the whole thing and devoured it. But for those of you who are just getting introduced to the Course in Miracles, this is like a little supplemental book. So I circled in here some stuff that I wanted to talk to you about in this whole process of this connecting the spiritual with the physical, and then the brother the sonship that's going across that whole thing. um and so as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, let me pull that book out and share with you something from there. But also this whole idea of, you know, that our relationship one to another, to each other, is so extremely important. And as long as we understand how important it is, it says in here on page 79, the Guide to Salvation in the Course in Miracles, chapter 5, it says, you cannot understand yourself alone. This is because you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship. So the sonship meaning us and our brothers, us that are taking on physical bodies, those folks you run into from time to time, whether it's people you date or whoever, that you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship, and the rightful place of the sonship is God. This is your life, your eternity, and yourself. It is of this that the Holy Spirit reminds you. It is that the Holy Spirit, it is that the Holy Spirit sees. This vision frightens the ego because it is so calm. So, it is this idea that we're not in this thing just for ourselves. We're not in it for ourselves alone. We are here for each other. We are part of this one whole that is the sonship. Um, and this is such a rich idea. So let me, and for some reason sometimes I'm just like I'm skipping around because I'm thinking to myself, is that the quote that I actually wanted to read? but that's the page that I have down for it, and so that was what I read, and it fits fine. Okay, so let me read this other piece over here out of the psychotherapy. It says each one must share one goal with someone else, and in so doing, lose all sense of. Okay, so where is my thing? Okay, and in so doing, lose all sense of mm, separate interests. Only by doing this is it possible to transcend the narrow boundaries the ego would impose upon the self. Only by doing this can teacher and pupil, therapist and patient, you and I accept the atonement and learn to give it as we receive. Each one of us must share one goal with one person, with another person. We have this perception that it's all about, just this individual walk, this just my thing, that as long as I'm okay, that everything else is okay. But what the course is telling us is that this is a collaborative venture. It says that there, collaborative, meaning a joining, a sharing, seeing your interests as connected with somebody else's. So let me see. There is another part in here. Let me see if I can read that to you because I think it illustrates that. Okay, so let me say it. Let me do this. I'm going to back up a little bit in that section here. And it says, to be a teacher of God, it is not necessary to be religious or to even believe in God to any recognizable extent. Now, did you hear that? That it says, or to even believe, it is not necessary to even believe in God to any recognizable extent. It is necessary, however, to teach forgiveness rather than condemnation. Even in this, complete consistency is not required, for one who had achieved that point could teach salvation completely without an instant or without a word. Mm. Within an instant or without a word. So if what we're learning is that when I change my mind, if I have right-mindedness, if I get it in my head, and all minds are joined, if I do that in an instant, things can shift, things can change. Like that instant for me in that car the other day, when I joined so completely and so thoroughly with two people who seemed to be of a different religion, whatever that means, but who seemed to be in a different spot, and we joined in total unity to love this one spirit, this one allness, this one thing that we know to be God. And in joining that, all those barriers or separateness and our differences, all those things fell away. All of that no longer mattered, and it transformed me. I don't know about them, but for me, it was a transformational experience because it was just so beautiful and so poignant, and just made me realize how important it is for us to connect. So I got it. This thing about people all around the world turning towards the east, joining in consciousness to pray, and not be fantastic about it, not to be, like, oh, let me make this sound so eloquent and so right, but just to simply pray and love and do that. It was so beautiful. So for me, I was like sitting there and I was thinking to myself, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to be about on a regular basis. Just joining with somebody else in that same type of love and doing that prayer work. And that in itself is beautiful. So, it's so funny because it reminded me of so much. It reminded me of this thing, remember the scripture in the Bible that says, how can you say that you love me when you don't even love your brothers? It's like, how can you love God if you don't love your brothers who you see all the time, every day, in every walk? We see them all the time and we claim that we're loving, But how could you love them if you don't, how could you love me if you don't love them? How could you really be about this thing? And so he also said, that which you do unto the least of these, you do also unto me. So it's telling you this idea that, this idea that you think that you can love one person and not love another person and then still be loving and still, come on. It's about learning to love the entirety of God, however God shows up, in whatever way it shows up. Whether it's the person on the street with the saggy pants, or the person that is doing wrong, or the guy that just ran off and snatched somebody's iPad while we're sitting out at the park. Once we learn how to love and learn how to forgive, that is the real true path to understanding what it means to be in this life, this God life. I love that. So relationships, developing relationships, loving relationships, and shared interests are absolutely necessary. So I think that sometimes we are challenged, in how we see things. I received that, the NTI, I think it's called. So Duff, thank you so much for that. I love that little book. It's a rich little book, a reinterpretation of the scriptures. And it is just so like right on time and right on target. And there was, how you remember certain things as you're going through and, you're thinking about stuff. So there was this one particular story in the Bible. And, I know we all, are like, trying to figure out how do we make stuff applicable to our life today. And that's a constant challenge. How do we see this journey? How do we see our place? How do we see the relevance in our life right now? So there was this one story that I remembered of this guy in the Bible, and it was talking about how he was just so full of himself, just so like, I'm so important. We all do that at times. And, we've thought ourselves to be grand, this grandiosity, this whatever we get caught up in. But he thought he was so special. And he was like, my harvest just came in and I got silos full of stuff, grain, and I've got corn and I've got all this other stuff. He's got all of this stuff. And he's like, feeling himself. And the way that the story goes, it says in there that God said, you fool, this day your soul is required of thee. So it was like this whole thing of, like I started to think to myself, like, okay, Sandra, this day, let me show you what master I'm serving. Let me show you what I'm doing here. And not in the pompous sense, but to say that, what, I can love in spite of. No matter what you bring to me, I can move on beyond that and past it. If my value is that I'm loving, no matter how you come to me, I should be able to stand in that awareness of what it means to be loving for me, and understand that it's not about just me, but it's about learning how to love in spite of, or love because we're all one. And so, so as I started reading this, I started reading it all over again. And it's so rich in this little book. So it says in here, and this is the quote that I was trying to get the last time. It says, and I say that I love all religion, but it's kind of funny because when this book had started talking about it again, it says formal religion has no place in psychotherapy, but it also has no real place in religion. In this world, there is an astonishing tendency to join contradictory words into one term without receiving without receiving the contradiction at all. We call them oxymorons today, where we put something that totally means something else with some, so it's kind of funny the way we do that, but without really realizing the contradiction. We attempt to formalize religion. The attempt the attempt to formalize religion is so obviously an ego attempt to reconcile the irreconcilable that it hardly requires elaboration here. Religion is experience. Psychotherapy is experience. At the highest levels, they become one. And that was the one I was trying to think of last time. At the highest level, religion and psychotherapy are one. Neither is truth itself, but both can lead to truth. What can be necessary to find truth, which remains perfectly obvious, but remove the seeming obstacles to true awareness? So, so this little book, if you don't have it, I hope you get it, because it is such a rich little thing. And I wanted, I could sit up here and read to you out of this book all day long, but I won't, because to some extent I know that you can read yourself, and so it might be a little demeaning to kind of sit here and continuously read to you all the time. Although I love to do it, it's so funny because uh, part of my challenge too in really teaching this is recognizing that like I have partners. I've always had prayer partners that worked with me on certain things, but I wanted to join with someone and really do some of this necessary work that I see that I have to do. And so in doing that, I've got somebody that I work with, and it's so funny because as I sit there and I see all of the things as we go through, the joining of minds, the joining of spirit, and it's just such a rich little experience when you start to move into it from a different perspective. It is a rich thing. So I can't see all of what the things they're saying here because I got that little thing that's trying to get me to download something, and I don't know how to get this in front of that without. Um, okay, so I see that yes, same as the seemingly most popular religions. I can't see all of that. Thanks for reminding me. I've had the book for years. So yeah, no matter the form that rises one up above duality. Okay, so I can't see all of that, but as soon as I figure out what the heck that is on my screen about this Java script, it's trying to, sometimes I just think that these little pop-up windows come up, and I don't know if it's like trying to trick me into downloading something, but since I'm online I don't have time to look at that, and so I won't. I've got something else that I wanted to read here to you, and it's a couple more things, and I know I'm getting short on time, and I love doing this so much. You guys, I say that as soon as I get all my stuff together, I'm going to, even if it's just a half an hour a day, I'm going to start doing this on a more regular basis. I know once a week seems regular to you, but I mean, if I could do this every single day, I really would. Um, okay, so I always read this thing. Did I actually tell myself to read this over again? So I guess if I'm turning to this page, I need to read it to you. But I'm always reading this. Okay, so I'll read this part here to you. The Holy Spirit teaches you that if you look only at yourself, you cannot find yourself because that is not what you are. Whenever you are with a brother, you are learning what you are because you are teaching what you are. He will respond either with pain or with joy, depending on which teacher you are following. So the quote that I always read is off of that page as well. And I'll read that because it's here and just because it's such a beautiful thing. Um, it says right click and it will let you close. Okay, maybe I'll see if I can do that in just a second. When you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. Never forget this. For in him you will find yourself or you will lose yourself. Whenever two sons of God meet, they are given another chance at salvation. So this is truly a collaborative venture, you guys, and we are truly here for one another. And in this healing, as we learn to look at each other with love and acceptance and all that stuff, we will truly get to where we desire to be in our hearts and our minds and our souls. Now, there was something else I wanted to talk about a little bit before, and I want to make sure I touch on this before I get off into this. Whew, so rich, so rich, so rich. Your meaning cannot be out of accord with his because your whole meaning and your only meaning comes from his and is like his. God cannot be out of accord with himself, and you cannot be out of accord with him. You cannot separate yourself from your creator who created you by sharing his being with you. So beautiful, so beautiful. So, so here I'm going to say this because I went someplace the other day and I was talking to an older man, and he was talking about something that happened to him when he was younger. I said to him, and he shared this from out of his pulpit. I had said to him, he didn't say it where anybody knew that it was me that was talking, but I asked him why it was necessary that in his talks with people that he seems so combative to me. Why is it necessary, I said, to assault people's opinions? I mean, the Course even says that belief is not necessary. And when you start the workbook, it says you don't have to believe any of this stuff. Belief is not necessary. And I learned from coming up in Science of Mind that that there are certain laws, spiritual laws that work regardless of whether or not you believe in them or not. These laws work. God, you don't add. Oh man, there is a thing in that book that was about that too. You don't add anything to God by believing in God. Oh, where is that? You don't add anything. And so your belief, it said in here, oh man, where is that at? It says in here, this idea that you cannot believe in God is, oh yeah, here it is. Yet it is not the awareness of God that constitutes a reasonable goal in psychotherapy. This will come when psychotherapy is complete. But where there is forgiveness, truth must come. It would be unfair indeed if belief in God were necessary for the psychotherapeutic success. Nor is belief in God a really meaningful concept, for God can be but known. Let me say that again. It would be unfair indeed if belief in God were necessary to the psychotherapeutic process. Nor is belief in God a really meaningful concept, for God can be but known. Belief implies that unbelief is possible. Okay. Belief implies that unbelief is possible, but knowledge of God has no true opposite. Not to know God is to have no knowledge, and it is to this that all unforgiveness leads. And without knowledge, one can have only belief. Now, okay, so I don't know if you feel me, right? But it's not necessary. So when he sits there and he attacks people's notion of what God is, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why? There was this movie, I don't know if I told you guys about this before. I was watching this Stephen King movie called The Stand. It was years ago, and it came out as a mini-series. And in this mini-series, I'm running out of time, I darn it. In this mini-series, there was, I'm like looking at it and I'm thinking to myself I was going to get something wonderful out of it. And I was like just watching it. And, for the most part, I was like thinking to myself, I'm not really getting anything out of this show. I don't even know that I like this show. But it's going on and on and on and on and on. And so finally, about the day before it was about to end, say for instance, it was a 7-day miniseries. The day before it was about to end, there was this one little line in there where this woman, the older woman who was like the leader of the pack. So, not really the leader, but she was kind of the spiritual leader of the pack. She was telling me, because this guy, they were on the side of God and everybody else was on the side of darkness. And so she was telling this guy, she was like, baby, we need you to go out there and we need you to be the one that's going to take the stand. And the guy is like, he was like, what? He was like, first off, he's a deaf mute. He couldn't talk. He couldn't hear, and no, I think he could hear, but he couldn't talk. And, he had all these other issues. And so he's looking at her. He was like, what? And then he was like, I can't do it. And she was like, oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And he was like, no, 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 I don't, I can't do it. And so she kept telling him, insisting that he can. And so he finally got this little sheet of paper and he was going to write down for her the reason why he couldn't do it. And the reason why he couldn't do it, he says, I don't believe in God. And what the woman said was so funny because she looked at the sheet of paper as if it had to sink into her consciousness. And she looks at him and she laughs. And she says, baby, that's all right. She said, God believes in you. It. And so we have this notion that, our belief in God does something, but really God is believing in us. God is loving us. God is forgiving you. God is just everything. And so this notion that we're adding something is just, whatever. So, I was saying to him, I was like, it seems like, that he's always attacking people about their beliefs and how they believe and whether or not, the Bible is true and all this other stuff. And I'm like, why? Why is that necessary? It doesn't add anything for you to say, this school of thought is right and this is wrong. And, people attacking people for their religion. I don't get it. I don't understand why. What's the point? Why is it necessary? And so, he after he says this and he's telling these people that somebody said this to him, then he gives this story about what happened when he was a child. And he talked about, how, first off, he talked about one incident that happened when he was a child, and it was a racial incident. And then he turned around and he started talking about when he went to college, and he said that he got there, and of course, we all have to go and see the counselor, and then the counselor tells us, helps us to discover what kind of course and study that we should go through. And so this particular counselor said to him, you know, maybe you ought to try going down this path and taking this coursework like they did me. I mean, they did the same thing. I told them I wanted to go into philosophy. And they were like, oh, you shouldn't, nobody takes philosophy. What kind of job are you going to get with a philosophy degree? That's what the lady was looking at me. And she was like, for right now, I'm going to just go ahead and put you in political science because philosophy is not necessarily a meaningful major to have. So this person did the same thing to him. And she was like, you'll never, imprisoning him in her thoughts again. You'll never get into the PhD program, so you might as well just, go on into something else. And it seemed as if that spurred him into action. And so not only did he get his PhD, he got it in record time. And so he was just talking about it, who is she? She's trying to tell me something and blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, and so it was so funny because I had to go up to him and I was like, you know what? I said, there's truly only one of us here. And he gives me this look, and I was like, yeah. I said, what you heard, this is out of the Matrix, what you heard was for you and you alone, right? And so whatever it took to spur you to do what it is that you do is not about the other person. We make it about somebody else, and we're thinking that they're attacking us and that they're doing something wrong. But that woman told him exactly what he needed to hear in order to motivate him to do what he did. I mean, and for all of us, these people, this outpicturing, you're just an outpicturing. Somebody else is just an outpicturing of you. And it's not necessarily about all of the stuff that we think it's about. It's about us meeting God and however God needs to show up so that we get it. I mean, so that we get to where we need to be. And it just so helps. It helps when we start to change around how we see the world. It's really only one of us here. all of us are taking part in this sonship. And when you don't include yourself, ah, ah, something is missing. So I think this is something just so beautiful. So let me see. I know I have something else that I want to share with you guys, but I should probably, like stop because I am like sitting here thinking to myself, like I'm running all the time and there's so much I want to tell you about. And there's so many other things that I want to talk to you about. And so let me think. Did I finish up my thing about um, the connection, the connection heaven to earth, and then the brothers to one another, and knowing that it is about the totality of doing both and being present in both. Did I read out of this page 121? Yes, that your meaning could not be out of accord with him. I did. And so I read all that stuff, and I think that there was another quote that I had about imprisonment, but I guess that too is not necessarily that important right now. But all the ways that God shows up. We all like to think that we're right, that we're on the right path, and that our way is the best way. Um, our ego tells us that. Our ego tells us that, like that we've got to be right. And then there's the other part that says, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? So if my thoughts about religion, about God, kept me from having the friends that I have, it's so funny because I was thinking to myself, like, God created Black people on purpose, because we're a real challenge to one another. And then God created white people on purpose because we're a real challenge to each other. And then God created Asian people, and then the Muslim religion, and then the Catholic religion, and then the Baptist religion, and then oh my gosh, and the Pentecostal religion, and all of this, we mixed up the languages, we mixed up the experiences, so that we necessarily have to come together and learn how to love and learn how to be. And so all this stuff is on purpose. All of it is part of God. And there, I remember sharing with you this story out of Joseph Campbell about Finnegan's Wake, and how it kept pointing to the one scripture that said that like if we just challenge, let's see how big we can sin, let's see how big we can mess up, so we can see how big God's ability to forgive us is. As a matter of fact, God doesn't hold anything against you. It's this notion, that we have this idea of sin and all this stuff, that this idea that we somehow miss the mark. It's not necessarily something that God is holding up against you. That's one of the things that I love about going through Science of Mind teachings. And Science of Mind in that particular religion, they talk about this thing of God not being based on emotions, not having these emotions, but rather, in fact, being this thing called law and operating out of necessity. So if we recognize this idea that God is loving, right? And if God is loving and gives to us freely, if God is just totally giving to us freely, God is always saying yes to you. The place at which you have fear blocks that awareness, blocks your ability to receive, blocks those things. It's not God withholding from you, it's you withholding from you. And so if you get out of your own way, if you start to look at it like God is not this emotional person that's getting jealous and getting upset and having judgments about you, but rather it is your own things. You are at the expense of your own thoughts. You are feeling and suffering from your own fear, your own ideas of inadequacy, your own ways that you imprison your brothers and yourself. Those things are things that you're doing. And so if you get out of your own way and just be, just be. Know thyself, love thyself, and to know thyself. And to love God is to love you. And if you just stop with all that other craziness, you'll experience truly what it means to be the miracle. Yeah, miracle, miracle, miracle. Woo! Miracles happen every day. And yeah, so nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. This has been Sandra Bishop. You guys, if you are not following me on Twitter, please do so, Sam Bishop on Twitter. If you are on Facebook, friend me, Sandra D. Bishop, or follow me on my fan page at Sandra Thrives. That would be facebook.com/Sandra Thrives. I'm on Ustream at Sandra Said It on Ustream, and my website is sandrasaidit.com. Who said that? sandrasaidit.com. Okay. And I'm still working on my website, and so hopefully I'll have all that stuff up for you in a bit. You're lovely. I love you guys. I'm as soon as I get off of here, I'm going to get this little window down and read your the statements that you guys made. Everybody else, I'm so sorry, because I really like to read these, because I know that there are people listening who are not necessarily on the chat room, and so I wanted to share with you what they said, but I couldn't. So hey, you guys, I love you. I love you from the bottom of my heart. And let me make room for Barrett Hadim. All right, see you guys. Bye. Okay, I'm turning over to Mike. Oh gosh, it's not letting me let go of the mic. Oh my gosh. So, it's not letting me do anything, you guys. So wait a minute. Give me 1 second, Dove, and let me see. I don't want to download this, so if you don't want to see this message again, please uninstall Java technology from your computer. So, okay, so let's see. Okay, so, all right.